TCT presents Public Report, a look at the issues and events of importance to our viewing area. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to TCT Public Report. I'm your host today, Richard McCorkle, and I am joined by my beautiful co-host and my wife, Crystal. How are you doing today?
I am doing great.
Good for both of us to be here today,
Yes.
because this is a very, very important subject that we're going to be touching on today. Our guest today is Dr. Katrina Sweet, and she is part of the Patch Incorporated. And we're going to discuss some pretty heavy subjects and some really important things. So I really encourage you to stay through the whole program. Doctor, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank
Awesome.
you.
And what exactly is Patch?
Well, Patch is a nonprofit organization, and it stands for Parents and Their Children.
Okay. Wow. And what is that?
Well, we are a nonprofit organization, as I stated, and we focus on educational disparities and abuse.
Wow.
So our mission includes empowering and healing women of survivors of any type of abuse, like human trafficking, labor trafficking, sexual abuse, domestic violence, and things of that nature.
Wow. When was it founded?
It was founded in 2011. So when we initially started, we were just focusing on sexual abuse and educational disparities. Over time, we have expanded our mission to deal with topics such as human trafficking and labor trafficking, because that is now on the rise in the state of North Carolina.
Right.
Yes.
And you read about it so much, and you just don't know that what's happening around, even in your backyard. This is just amazing. So what was the passion for you to get involved in this and get this vision?
Well, I am the executive director. And so I am just passionate about serving people that are hurting, people that have been abused, because I am a survivor of sexual abuse.
Okay.
And so my passion started from there, and I love to serve women who have experienced some type of tragedy. So I like to tell my board of directors and people who work with the organization that we want to model what Jesus did. You know, Jesus said the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. And so it's my passion, but I'm also serving. It's my way of giving back to the community and to survivors who have gone through what I have gone through. So.
Right. And now, that's one of the things that you just said that kind of struck with me. People who do go through abuse, do go through these tragedies that follow them in their mind and their emotion all their lives.
Absolutely.
It's hard to know when to reach out and how to reach out. And I would assume when you went through what you did, how did you feel? Did you feel alone? I mean, what were you at?
Absolutely, because the first thing that you deal with is no one is going to believe you. So you lose your voice initially because you feel like you've been violated, your rights have been taken away from you. And so sometimes you're re-victimized all over again, especially when you reach out to people and no one hears you, no one believes you. And so the first book that I wrote was Silent Screams from Within, a woman's story from tragedy to triumph. And so I entitled the book that because that's what I felt like. I had all of these screams on the inside, but no one was hearing me. And so victims often feel that way. And so you are exactly right. You have to know when to reach out to them, because some people don't want the help.
Right.
And so in many cases you have to sit back and allow them to come to you, but you let them know we are here. And that's why I think programs like this, they're good, because you're letting people know about the organizations in the community and the services that they provide.
Wow. Dr. Sweet, what is your professional background?
Well, I am a business professor by trade. So I teach at a college, North Carolina Wesleyan College in Rocky Mount, and I teach business courses. So again, that's one of my passions, teaching, and also connecting to young people. And I'm still able to serve and be passionate about what I like, reaching out to the hurting, because we have people at all walks of life who are hurting and dealing with things that you could never imagine. So sometimes God does use your background or your profession to do ministry as well.
Yes, He does. Do you find out that people are kind of drawn to you with the same thing that you have went through just automatically just come to you.
Absolutely. It is amazing what God does and how he does what he does. So I do not question him anymore. But yes, people who are hurting, people who feel like they do not have a voice, people who feel like no one will believe them, they do tend to be drawn to me.
Wow.
And they do just come and open up to me. And so sometimes I know because I have, you know, this, I call it spiritual discernment. And so sometimes I can, you know, God can just download something to me to let me know that is one of my babies and that is your assignment.
Wow,
So,
that's powerful.
Yeah.
That is powerful. So with your book, you said you wrote a book, and is this basically about your personal journey?
It is.
Do a little run through about that. Give us a little bit.
Oh, wow. Yes. So I talk about from the age of 11 until 15, I was sexually assaulted or molested by a family member. And that led to a vicious cycle in my life. I mean, and you know, as you stated, when people go through that, it is a vicious cycle. So there are other factors that they are now dealing with. And so for me, it was teen pregnancy, it was rebellion, I did all types of things, but thank God, God redeems.
Yes, because you sure don't look like what you've been through.
I do not, thank God, but that's only because of the power of Jesus Christ. It is not because of me. And so he redeems and he restores, and that's what I love about him. He is truly a God of restoration. I don't want to cry,
That's okay.
but he is a God of restoration. And so you're right, I don't look like what I've been through. He has recovered all that the enemy took. And so these are tears of joy. They are not tears of sadness. And so I just want to reach out to others who is now walking the same journey, just to let them know this is not the end of your story. God has so much more for you.
Absolutely.
And that is what led me to writing the book. The book was a journal. And so that's how I dealt with what I was going through. It was later in life that I went through therapy, but when those things were happening to me, I was a child, and so, you know, families just did not believe in therapy at that time, at least in the African American.
Absolutely, I can attest to that.
We did not believe in therapy, so journaling was therapeutic for me. And so the book, over time, I had completely forgot about the journal. It was up in the top part of my closet, and one day I was looking for something and the journal just kind of fell, and I opened it and I began to read the journal, and I heard the Lord say to me, this would be a book, and I immediately said no. God, this is my story, and I'm not ready to share my story with the world. I'm not ready to become public with this. Although my immediate family knew, that was never a secret to the family, but to the world, I was not ready to share that. And God said to me, this book is not for you. It is for others. And that is when I started transferring it from journal format to book format.
And you brought up a fantastic point that God spoke to you and he said, this is not about you. This is about others. And that's when you know God's in it, and it's not your agenda to say, okay, I want to be a great author, or I want this to be. And another great thing that really touched my heart, you said, this is not the end of your story.
Absolutely.
And what came to my mind when you said that was, this doesn't define you. This isn't your life story.
It is not. Let me tell you, as a result of that, not only was it teen pregnancy and rebellion, but every summer I was in high school and I went to summer school because it wasn't that I didn't know the material, but when you're troubled and you're dealing with so much, you really cannot function. And so that's why we added the educational disparity component to Patch to kind of address those needs with children. But people don't believe that I went from almost GED to having a PhD.
My goodness.
So I would not have been the likely candidate that people would have chosen to walk this journey. I didn't know it. But God, when I say he really does have a plan, and he recovers and he restores, and he set you on the journey that he wants you to walk on. And so I can't take the credit. I can't take the glory. All of it really goes to God.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely. And if you can't, and if you would not be a voice, if you would just have kept it inside and disobeyed God,
Right.
for, you know, maybe not put so much heaviness to it, but that's what you'd be saying. You're saying no.
Right.
People that need that, we forget that we have things that God's instilled in us through our experiences and our personalities that He wants us to get out
Right.
to that. So when did you have that? So when you started writing it out, how did even the process? I know it was a journal, but I
Right.
mean, you had to put it in some form of a book form.
Right. And that's an interesting question. But I can tell you, when I began to do that, I relived some of the memories all over again, which led me to therapy.
Okay.
You know, I began to realize you really need, there are some deep down issues that are rooted down in there that God wants to bring to surface because He wants total deliverance.
Right.
And so He really showed me through that process that I was not ready to minister to others until He could totally minister to me. So forgiveness became a great component of the outcome of me writing that book,
Right.
where I had to forgive
Yes.
the perpetrator.
Right.
I could not hold on to that because I realized he was probably sleeping well at night and had gone on with his life, but I was still a prisoner of some sort and
Right.
held captive to my past, and God wanted to break me free totally
Right.
of that. So,
Wow.
so I began to relive it all over again, but then God also, in His amazing way, showed me the areas that He really wanted to deliver me and set me totally free
Right.
from. And that's what He did. And so now I can sit across the table from the perpetrator. I pray for him every day. In my house, I have a room called the War Room.
Wow.
Where I go in and pray and spend time with God. And so I have people names on the wall that I call out daily, and I ask God to, you know, save them. And and what I've discovered is the more you pray for people, the softer your heart gets towards
Oh,
them.
wow.
So,
Wow.
so I can look at the perpetrator now and say, "How are you doing?"
Wow.
Without any hatred or bitterness in my heart. And
Yes.
it's just, it's genuine. And
Right.
I know that's God. That is
Yes.
not me. That is totally God.
And I love how you said that, because it's very easy, you know, we're commanded to pray for those who persecute us and love our enemies and stuff like that,
Right.
but that's easier said than done.
Yes.
But God led you on a purpose to actually get your hands dirty,
Yes.
go inside yourself, which is
Yes.
the hardest part to
Yes.
sometimes dig up.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
you then were genuinely able to, okay, I truly do, I'm just not saying
Yeah.
it. Or I'm
Yes.
just going to be nice and then I'm going to get all mad later, you know, once we go through.
Yes.
And I think it's really important to share that process with people. So,
Yeah.
well,
Wow, that's good. And also human trafficking. Let's talk about that
Yes.
a little bit.
and what exactly is that? Because that's a term we hear all the time.
Well, yes, human trafficking, as I stated, is on the rise. Research shows that North Carolina is among the top 10 states now.
Wow.
And so that's when a person is being coerced or manipulated to provide a service for little to no money. So it's like this quid pro quo. You give a little of this for that, but they are treated mostly like property or like slaves.
Okay.
And so that is now a major issue. And also labor trafficking. You may have people that are being bussed in from other countries,
Right.
working long hours, and they may get paid, again, little to no money. And so
Right.
it's all abuse.
Right.
Because you're basically holding people captive
Yes.
and in prison. And what did Jesus say? He came to do what?
Set the
To
captives
set
free.
the
Yes.
captives free.
Yes.
So I kind of see Patch as an organization. We, you know, you have so many other organizations that are working against human trafficking, or they are anti-human trafficking, which is good because we are too.
Yes.
But they have been established for a while, and so people in the community know that they're there. So ladies are referred to them. But I kind of see Patch, you know, our uniqueness or our strategic positioning,
Okay.
as I would say to my business students. We are frontliners. We go to where they are and we find them.
Wow.
And then we connect them to the services that are available, whether we can provide it or whether or not another organization can provide it. So that's the uniqueness. We're in the field, and you said it best, get our hands dirty.
Yes.
So everything that God uses me to do, I gotta get dirty with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I ask God, like, why? I just want something easy. Why do I have to get dirty?
Right.
Why do I have to get dirty?
Right.
But he always uses me in the dirt.
Wow, wow.
And God said to me, because treasure oftentimes can be found in trashy places.
Oh,
Yes,
wow,
yes.
that's wonderful.
And
That's great.
what we throw away, God can use, and is valuable to God. And
Yes,
so,
amen.
Wow.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cry,
No,
but
that's okay.
No, this is good. You're very
It's a
passionate.
very emotional,
Yeah.
heavy subject, and it has to be dealt with, and it has to be talked
Right.
about. And so you said that North Carolina plays a pretty heavy role in the trafficking. Why particularly North Carolina?
well, not just North Carolina, you have other states,
Yes.
but we have I-95.
I see.
And so it's easy
That's
to
funny you
actually
say that.
access your clients or
Right.
to bring them here,
Wow.
or whatever the case may be. You have the 95 highway, or what do you call it? 95.
The corridor or something
Yes.
like that. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay, but that's funny because I used to work in loss prevention way before I met you, honey. I had a different life, and we dealt with a lot of the professional shoplifters that would come right down 95, and I
Exactly.
worked in Smithfield at the time, so that was right there at 95. So I understand that.
Right.
So
And what type of, when people are getting these people in, what type of, I guess, are they manufacturing jobs? They're getting people to work free, or farming? What is that?
Well, you can see it in all professions, but primarily on the farm, massage parlors, restaurants. I never would have guessed restaurants,
Right.
but yes.
Well, you know what? I can see the massage or whatever, because sometimes, you know, when you go in for a massage in different places, I remember going out in some malls and they don't speak English at all.
Exactly.
Not saying that they're in there from one of those trafficking things, but I remember it's like they don't. You say something to them and they just sometimes don't know anything.
Right,
So
right,
That's maybe
yeah.
one of the signs.
One
too.
of the signs, yeah. And so one of the things, we're getting ready to write a proposal now to be a lead principal investigator on our first grant with human trafficking. So I don't know if we will get funded, but we're going to try.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
But one of the components we will add will be a translator, because you do, as you stated,
Yes.
you find a lot of them cannot speak English, and so they're in a new environment, a new culture that they don't understand.
Yes.
So they are truly isolated.
Wow.
And so we want to reach them as well.
right,
Mm-hmm.
and they're scared too.
They are.
Because they know they're here not by the proper way of getting here.
Exactly.
And working through the system and all the laws that protect us when we pay, when we, our checks and getting paid,
Right.
all the stuff.
Right.
That must be terrible.
Wow.
So you must have seen some great transformation stories of people arriving there. Just give me one.
Well, we're kind of new to this, as I stated, but I've seen other organizations who have done amazing jobs with getting them or providing direct care, whether it's shelter for a couple of days. I think the average shelter will allow them to stay 90 to 120 days. The uniqueness about Patch and what we want to do, we want to model after an organization that is in Nashville, Tennessee, that actually embraces sister organizations, and they like for us to model them. So
Wow.
they do it very well, and just reading their success stories inspired me.
Wow.
So they offer housing beyond the initial crisis.
Okay.
So where most shelters or transitional homes who assist these victims, they allow them to stay 90 to 120 days, where they allow them to stay 2 years. So the three components is housing, social enterprise, and then economic independence, and that's what we want to do. Those are the success stories that I've read with this particular organization. They house them for 2 years. They go through a very intense program But during that time, they have their medical care, any counseling that they need. They offer them skill sets or any educational training that they need, because the whole goal is to watch this, employ them within their own social enterprise.
I see.
Right. And so once they employ them, they can now be compensated for the services that they provide, which will allow them to have the economic independence that they need. So they don't have to be trafficked, working as a slave for little to no money. Or sometimes when you're in the sex industry, it's no money. The perpetrator gets paid, but you don't receive anything. So.
Isn't that crazy? Crazy.
So that organization is called Thistle Farm.
Thistle Farm
In Nashville, Tennessee. The model is amazing, and they embrace sister organizations. And my plan is to fly out in November and meet with them.
Oh, that's
Good.
To see how Patch can model that same template. So
wow. Now, do you find that through your experience, is it families or is it just one person? What's coming through?
Oh, sometimes it's just one individual, but sometimes it's the parent, mothers, and their children.
Wow.
And so,
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, the whole family, my goodness.
Ooh, it's very tough. We don't have it all figured out.
Yes,
So I think sometimes we just have to, it's trial and error. You cross that bridge when you get there, and you make the best decision that you can make for that situation. So everything is case by case, situation.
Right, which is good too. Honestly, if it is case by case, you know the person's going to get the attention they need, or the family they need. Now, I know that again, I'm not an expert at this, but this is a huge global problem. This is not just in the southeast here.
Absolutely.
This is a huge one. And we know you have to have a great system to keep this going. So there's this sort of shadowy thing that's out there. Do you feel that you come up against that at all, or?
Not yet, because I've not really gotten my feet wet as of yet with human trafficking. We have just done the research. We've done what we call our SWOT analysis, scanning our environment to see who's doing what, gathering all of the research that we need so we can apply for the upcoming grants. So we have not entered or encountered any issues as of yet, but I have read of other organizations who have. A lot of warfare goes into those types of organizations because the enemy doesn't want people helping and setting free and delivering. So if anything, I've experienced warfare.
Wow.
And so, of course, the public doesn't know why, but I know why, because it's ministry for me. So it's a lot of spiritual warfare.
And it's funny when you do that, when you kind of touch in on the enemy's territory, as it were. What are some ways that you were like, okay, I am pushing? What are some ways that you were doing that? You were feeling that? Oh,
he's attacked me physically, dealing with spiritual infirmity, spirit of infirmity, finances he has attacked, anything that he would try, just conflict and confusion to get you to back off. And so you have to recognize this is a trick of the enemy, and I am going to keep pushing forward. So you put on your armor of God and you say, hey, if you want to fight, this is what we're going to do, but I'm not backing off my mission because I know what God has called me to do. So anything that he called you to, he will see you through.
Absolutely.
And so I'm learning that I am not, sometimes I get weary, but God has to remind me, do not be weary in well doing. You will definitely reap a harvest if you faint not. Just stay on the battlefield.
Absolutely. And you, I'm sure in God's eyes, are a great warrior and a great general because you went through that battle before, and now that you're advocating, and that's a light term for what these organizations are doing. You're on behalf of them, and you're just destroying the enemy, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. So what was on the bigger horizons for Patch now? What are the next things, and how can we in the community put our hands into it?
Oh wow! Well, we will always. One of the things that a nonprofit would do, we have to find a corporate sustainability plan. In other words, how are you going to maintain these projects when the funders are gone? So the community just, you know, if it's nothing more than marketing, donations are always great,
Right.
Yes.
and sponsorships, but just supporting the organization and standing behind the vision and the mission of an organization.
Okay.
That's always a great place to start, especially once you determine that there is a need in the community. And that's about it.
Wow.
For now, yeah.
Now, I know where we had our home before, we lived around a lot of the farms and areas and stuff. And if, say just a person like us, we were just kind of noticing, this doesn't seem right. What can we do?
Report it.
Okay.
I used to work at the women's prison, and it's amazing how God has used my past experiences to where I am now. And in the prison, we dealt with sexual assault.
Okay.
And so there's a term called PREA, P-R-E-A, Prison Rape Elimination Act. I served on that team. I was a first responder to the victim. So I was the first person that they saw once the allegations were made.
Okay.
I accompanied them to medical, you know, I took their interview, and so I was their advocate.
I see.
Is what I did. And so God is now using that skill set that I learned there, and He is allowing me to apply it in this season in my life. So if you see something that just doesn't seem right or is a bit out of the ordinary, report it. You're not saying that it's true, you're just making someone aware, law enforcement, aware that something may not be right here. I don't have all the answers, but just check it out.
Right.
You know, you have a moral obligation and duty to do so.
And we shouldn't be afraid to do that.
You should not be afraid. You can report anonymously now.
Right.
Some people don't want to get involved because they fear retaliation.
Right.
Yeah,
They
all that
fear,
stuff,
yes. And so organizations now have created a system where people can report anonymously. You never have to give your name.
Wow,
you know,
that's
you
good.
say your background was law enforcement,
Yes,
so
yeah.
you are aware of that.
Right.
People can report and never have to say who you are.
Wow.
And
So Patch Incorporated, how can people, what's the quickest way to reach you?
Well, I'm Facebook, Instagram. You can always email me, kls@katrinasweet.com, or the website, www.klspatch.org.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the show here and
Thank you
sharing with
so
us. And
much.
thank you for sharing
Yes,
from
yes.
your heart and your
Yes, this
personal
was
experience.
great.
That's really where the rubber meets the road, and
Thank
we
you.
know that's where truly passion comes from. So
Yes.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for TCT Public Report. Remember, keep your eyes open and be involved. Thank you.
This has been Public Report. Public Report discusses the issues of interest and importance to our viewing area. Please remember that the views expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of TCT or the station.
The Bible talks about seeking the kingdom first and all its righteousness, and all these other things that we seek will be added unto us. This is a great time to invest, amen, in the kingdom of God. God is asking you now to send your donations, send your charitable deeds, send your love offerings, so we can continue to keep doing the work of the Lord. This is the kingdom of God. Seek it first, and all those other things will be added unto you.